All right. Well, welcome everyone. Monmouth County Workforce Development Office. We are hosting Jack Kelly today. Jack's gonna talk to us a little bit about recruiting, how it works, the different recruiters and agency recruiters versus executive recruiters and the whole 9 yards, because guess what? They are a little bit different, and who knew? So it'll be educational as well as a great resource for you to ask some questions. Jack is an active contributor to Forbes magazine. He has written many articles. I just shared with you a recent article regarding recruiters and the differences and what you need to do to get the best out of that situation. So hopefully that intrigued your interest and you were able to read that. So he's going to go through a little bit of that. He's also a founding member of a company for recruiters, executive recruiters, and he has a lot of experience. So take it away, Jack. I'm sure you have a lot to contribute.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Christine, for inviting me here. And I'm very glad to chat with everybody. I've been a recruiter for going on 25 years. So basically, I started when I was in elementary school. I was a young prodigy recruiter, and I'm a CEO of an executive search firm, and we placed thousands of professional, predominantly mid to senior level white collar professionals. And our sector really is Wall Street, investment banking, hedge funds, private equity, that whole area. And as part of the job search strategy, most people, if not everyone, will turn to a recruiter. And I know it's one of those things where you hear recruiter, but you really don't know, like, what is a recruiter? And sometimes we're lumped in, and listen, I have no ego, so I feel I'm totally comfortable talking about this, is that, they'll say, it's in the same camp as kind of a used car salesperson, or kind of one of those sleazy insurance people, or a pushy real estate agent. And so people go into the relationship thinking, oh, what am I going to get involved with? I don't know. What are they going to do? Are they going to put me in a bad job? Or are they going to just ghost me? And I think there's a lot of bad press about it. So it's one of these relationships where you go into and you feel like, this may not be so good. And let me dispel some of the myths, but then maybe confirm some too. So this way you know what to do. Now, I might be very subjective saying it makes sense to deal with recruiters because I am one and I think they're highly effective. I'll give you kind of just a really overview. You have the folks who place C-suite, like CEOs, top-level executives, and they're usually routine searches. The vast amount of other recruiters are what they call contingency recruiters. And with contingency recruiters, it's kind of a horrible way to make a living. It's a eat what you kill kind of environment. So a company will give you a job order. They'll give myself and my company a job order to work for. And on a contingency basis, this means they may give it to Marty Lang's, Marty Latman's search firm, and Ken Lang's search firm, and another search firm, and they're going to do it themselves. So now you're competing with maybe half a dozen other search firms that each have recruiters within that search firm are looking for people. They're going to post it on LinkedIn, post it on job boards. So now it's a race. You have to find that right person as quickly as possible, because if you don't, your competition is going to find that person and place them. And if you put all the work and all the effort as a contingency recruiter and you don't come up with a winning candidate, nothing, no second prize, no trophy, you just nothing, all that time, effort. And the reason I'm giving that backdrop is because if you get a recruiter who either A, is really pushy, sometimes they're pushy because they know that, Barbara has the right experience, she's perfect for the job, she can her resume is excellent, the company she works for is fantastic, and maybe had a Zoom call with her and we feel she's great, we know we could place her. So boy, you're going to be kind of pushy because you want to get her on an interview to get her a job because you want to place her, that's your job, but you also want to get paid, you want to get your fee. And recruiters generally charge maybe 20-25% of a base annual salary. Retained searches would be like 30-35% depending on the role. So there's a financial incentive, and this is really important to kind of consider. When you're dealing with a recruiter, they have a financial incentive to place you because if they place you, they get paid. If they don't place you, they don't get paid. So they want to place you. They don't want to mess around. On the other side, what happens is that if you get the blow off, and I'm sure everybody has been through that, where you reach out to a recruiter or a recruiter reaches out to you, and then boom, ghosted. You don't hear back, you don't hear anything, and you're like, what's up? Now, they shouldn't do that, but they do. This is reality. And I'm not justifying it. I'm just, in this conversation, I figured, hey, I just want to be really transparent, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, so you know the landscape. And one of the reasons they do that is they realize, hey, Pasquale doesn't have the right background, the right experience, great person, but not a fit. And if I spend too much time, I'm going to lose out because I got to really focus my time on finding other people who have that right fit. Now, better recruiters would say that. They would say, hey, Lori, sorry, you have a great resume. You seem like an awesome person, but you really don't fit the background. So it may not work for this particular job, but let's keep in touch and I could help you down the road. Oftentimes, and you see this across the board, not only with recruiters, I'm sure you've seen this with HR people, with people you deal with. We're in this era now where, I don't know, there's no social politeness, there's no niceness. There's like, hey, if you can't help me right now, goodbye, I'm out of here. So there's the same thing happens in that environment with recruiting. Now, that being said, to look for a recruiter, because this is another kind of thing, it's not like one size fits all. What happens is, in my opinion, the best recruiters to deal with are the ones who specialize in your area. If you're an accountant, you want to find, let's say you're an accountant, you want to work in New Jersey. You want to find who are some of the best, recruiters who place accountants in New Jersey.
Jack, does that mean that the recruiter has to be from New Jersey?
Not necessarily, because, especially now with remote work, it's a whole game changer. But it helps when you have a recruiter who knows an industry. So, and it's not just in accounting, because accounting is pretty wide. So it may drill down to, is there a recruiter who does tax accounting, but then does tax accounting for pharmaceutical companies? And I'm being really sincere about this, is that you do want someone to drill down, because if that recruiter is an expert in your field, they're going to have contacts with the companies, they're going to have contacts with the HR people, they're going to have contacts with the hiring managers, they're going to know the culture, they're going to know what they look for in candidates, they're going to know the compensation. So then that's how you benefit, because then you have this person who's championing your cause, who's going to bat for you, because they feel it's a mutually benefiting relationship. They could help you get that job and they could get paid by doing their job. Now, if you don't, and then I think what happens a lot of times, people get frustrated because they have a recruiter and maybe a friend of a friend said, hey, you should speak with Jack Kelly. And that person is, let's say, in the film industry. And I have no context there. You could put a gun to my head. I wouldn't know what to do. And I might say, hey, Lisa, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I don't know that field. And Lisa walk away thinking I'm a jerk and I'm rude and I'm an ass because I'm not helping her. But the reality is I can't. I just don't know, because I don't have that bandwidth to help place somebody in that space.
Well, why don't you, Jack?
Because you know what? It's a good question. What happens, I find out.
I'm kidding.
No. It's a good question. No, it's a really good question, because I find out the most successful recruiters are the one who pick a niche and really know that niche. Now, it could be limiting to people because you're just in this one lane, but then you know that lane. You know the players, you know the people, you know the terminology. When you get a job description, you understand what it's all about. When you see a resume, you know if that person's a fit. So I find it very helpful. And I think a lot of times with the frustration comes in for people, when you deal with a recruiter who doesn't know your area, you feel like, what's up with this person? They don't understand what I do. It's like you're speaking two different languages. So I would say for the key to success with dealing with recruiters is trying to do your homework, and you can find it on LinkedIn, you could actually check out WeCruitr, because I have a recruiter database on there where you could take a look. It's free, and you could
You put it
find
in the
recruiters.
chat box, or I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that they have the exact www, whatever it is.
Definitely. And so it's, yeah, and it has a recruiter directory. So this way you could search for people who are in your field. If you're in tech, if you're in finance, whatever it may be, then you can kind of break it down. So you
So
could
the
look up.
list that you have, Jack, the WeCruitr.com, there is a list of recruiters
Yes,
per industry that
exactly.
are the go-to experts that have connections and can
Yeah.
help you with an IT job or a manufacturing
Exactly.
job, that kind of thing. Okay,
Exactly.
just wanted to
But
clarify.
and I want to be fair, it's not going to catch all for everything, but it's a resource. It's a good resource
Mhm.
that I would say to do in conjunction with this. You can look at LinkedIn and do searches for recruiters. I would also look at some of the top job boards and see, do you see the same recruiter posting jobs in your field? Because then you get a taste of it. I would check with coworkers, former coworkers, people you know who got good jobs in your space. And again, I'm saying in your space because they could have a recruiter got a good job somewhere else, but that doesn't mean they could help you because they're not in your industry. Then if you find a person who got, let's say, a great job, you find somebody, Jay found this awesome job in this great company and, got a whole, a lot of money moving over there. You want to kind of, and this is tough to do sometimes, it's awkward, but you want to say, hey, Jay, can you turn me on to your recruiter? We're in the same industry, same space. I'm open to looking. Could you make an introduction? Recruiters love that because rather than just getting some person pop up, send over a resume, you don't know who they are. I mean, clearly you'll help them, but it's much nicer when Jay says, hey, Jack, you got to meet Ralph. He's great. He has the same background as me, very awesome person, meet with him. So then it's just like any other relationship. It makes it just so much smoother and easier to do. So I would say and I know, I'm sorry if I'm kind of just shooting out a lot of information, but I figure I wanted to kind of just give a really good feel for what it is, because oftentimes people have these preconceived notions that, hey, this is what it is. And it's a different animal. It's a weird, different kind of thing. And that I would say it's when you're looking for a lawyer and you have a certain type of matter, it's so important you get that attorney who knows your area. If you have, let's say, a slip and fall lawyer who's great at what they do and they always win, but if that's not what you need, it's not going to help. You're hurting your own chances by retaining that attorney because they're going to have to learn everything about what you need to help with. So
I think you bring up a very good point, Jack. The specialty is definitely going to help you to succeed in the industry that you're looking for. Let me ask you, I know that recruiters, or I've heard through the grapevine, a lot of them depend on those ETSs and keywords, and look for those words in your resume to see if you are a good fit for particular jobs. When you are introduced to a recruiter through a friend of a friend, as you had mentioned, is it as important to use those keywords as it would be if you were a stranger applying?
It makes life so much easier. If I look at a LinkedIn profile or resume and the candidate clearly lists what they do, their responsibilities, where they work, oh my God, it makes life so much easier. It's so much easier. And it sounds obvious, but oftentimes when people put on, and recruiters probably look at LinkedIn first before the resume, actually, for the most part, when they're searching for people. So if your LinkedIn really captures the essence of who you are, what you do, where you work, what are your responsibilities, what are your achievements, boom, they just so clearly identify. Number one, it's easy through search engine optimization to find you. Number two, it just makes the life of the recruiter easy, because then they either know Karen is a great fit or she's not a good fit. So then it just cuts through all the clutter that you could find that right person.
Are
So
you losing out on opportunities because you're using certain words in your LinkedIn or your resume?
without a doubt,
As opposed to, something more general? You're closing doors that maybe something you could do.
without a doubt, Christine, because so let's say I'm searching for, let's say it's an investment bank and it's a director of anti-money laundering. When I'm going to go on LinkedIn, and let's just say for the sake of conversation, it's going to be New York City based, no remote. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to put in anti-money laundering, KYC, BSA, all the key terms that someone who holds this job would have on their resume LinkedIn profile. And then I look for New York and then the surrounding area. And then you want to see what pops up. So as a candidate or someone who's looking for a job, or even if you're not looking for a job, but just want to make sure you're there, someone notices you. So let's say Eric is not looking for a job, but has this on his LinkedIn profile. I see it pop up in my search criteria. And I'm like, wow, Eric is great for this. And I'll send a message through LinkedIn. Hey, Eric, I don't know if you're looking for a role, but I have this great job with a top investment bank seeking a head of AML, which is right up your alley. Would you be interested? And so out of the blue, he gets this opportunity. He may want it, maybe not, but it's always nice to get noticed and to hear.
So
And
that's a passive candidate?
Yeah. And for an active candidate, it's even better because you're like, oh, yes. Hey, thank you. Yes, I'm looking. I was downsized. Fantastic. Let's talk. And you'd be surprised how often when people do their LinkedIn profiles, it's lacking. They don't have all that data, all that information. I'm not sure why, but I would strongly suggest you want to make sure you have it so that, and I would share the resume, the LinkedIn profile with friends, family to see, can they get and understand what you do? Can they read and go, oh, okay, this is what you do. And if the person says, no, that's not what I do, then it's like, all right, you gotta really change it up because you want to make it really simple. Because oftentimes what happens, a recruiter, him or herself, may not be actually doing the search. They'll give it to sourcers who are generally younger, not as experienced people. So they have blinders on. They know, okay, I have to look, and the senior recruiter give them a list of criteria what to look for. So you need to have it. Whereas somebody like myself who's been doing this forever, intuitively you could pick up on maybe if they don't have the ingredients, I could kind of, if you have these two, I could kind of reasonably believe you're going to have some others. And I'm willing to take a chance and get in touch with that person. Let's have a conversation. But it's way better if you just put it, now, a lot of times, and this is not to me be anything disparaging against career coaches or resume writers or what have you, but as a recruiter, and I can only talk through that lens and through my, through my viewpoint, is that it doesn't matter the font, it doesn't matter how it looks, it doesn't matter if it's the coolest one, if it doesn't matter that this is what everybody else is doing. It matters, do you have the criteria? Do you have that checklist of skills that a recruiter could look and say, okay, these 10 ingredients, and check, 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 and you're like, perfect, this is it. This is the person.
So
this is great.
What you're saying is the standard 1-page resume versus 2-page resume versus 7-page resume doesn't really matter. The keywords matter.
Couldn't care less what it is. I mean, for 7, it could kind of be annoying because you got to go through everything. But if you could kind of condense it just to make it easier, I couldn't care if someone kind of sent an email to me and said, Jack, I'm looking for a job. Here's what I do. And they really highlight, here's my background. Here's my experience. Here's the compensation I'm looking for. That's fine. I don't care. It doesn't have to even be a formal resume because I then by looking at that email, okay, they were looking for, let's say 150 base plus bonus. Okay, that's in the range. Maybe we could even go higher. So cool, that makes sense. And then I see where they work, what they do, where they, do they have a degree? Do they have, maybe you need a JD, maybe you need a securities license. Okay.
So is there an order that it should be in? I mean, Marty brought up really great points, listing your achievements at your previous employers, make sure that you can see it. Is that something that you are also looking for, whether it is on your resume or your LinkedIn, or speaking from a recruiter standpoint? How is that interpreted?
I look at it this way, and again, I could just say through my experience as a recruiter is I look first to see, do they have the criteria for the job? And the reason I do that first is because companies, and Christine and I were talking a little bit about this sort of before we started. You'd think in a hot job market, there's a war for talent, there's a great resignation trend. You'd think companies would say, okay, we have this laundry list of a job description with 20 ingredients, and we're making you come in the office. We're not giving hybrid, we're not giving remote, and the pay is not so great. Like, what are you doing? We're never gonna find anybody. So the companies, you would think, would be a little bit more open-minded and say, all right, it's a war for talent, we need to hire. So instead of asking for these 12 ingredients, we'll take 5 because you're really smart and you're motivated, you're excited. But that doesn't generally happen. It's a bizarre thing. And I don't know if people here are going through that, where you scratch your head and say, I don't get it. Everything I read, watch, see is saying it's a war for talent. And I have, all right, maybe I don't have 12 out of 12, but I have 6 of them. Give me a shot. Generally speaking, they don't. And it's really frustrating for job seekers because they should, at least, at the very least, give it a shot. And to your question specifically, but then when you have the achievements and all that, that helps supplement it. But because what I see is that, generally speaking, they're very rigid. The mindset is still kind of in the early 2020s when the pandemic was raging. And a lot of these companies haven't adjusted and said, oh my gosh, we have to change. We have to pay more money. We have to offer better benefits. We have to offer flexibility. We have to offer remote work. We have to offer hybrid work to attract people. And we have to be yielding.
As a recruiter, you see that there is a disconnect between job seeker wants and business wants, and we need to make that connection. Is that a part of a recruiter's job to show a hiring manager or whoever they will be reporting to or ultimately responsible to, that a person, even on paper, might not look the greatest, but yet they are, through conversation, the greatest candidate?
Absolutely. As a recruiter, what I try to do, and you're like, a recruiter is also like a matchmaker, because you need both sides of the equation to make it work. You could have a company that loves the candidate, but if the candidate doesn't love the company, it's generally not going to work. I find out if both sides kind of just they connect, it works. Then when it comes to salary negotiations and all that, it's easier to get it done. So that as a recruiter, you may have to go to the hiring manager, and let's say the hiring manager is Matteo, and say, hey, Matteo, I'm not sure, what you've seen in the market, but I can tell you what I'm seeing in this space is that all your competitors are offering remote work, flexible options, hybrid options. Also, the pay is going up. And what you're offering is definitely below market. And I'll keep looking for you, but I don't think we could find the kind of person you want. So my humble suggestion to you would be this: either A, raise the compensation or lower the criteria, but we have to do something because we could keep looking for months and months and it's just not going to happen. And then the same thing from a job seeker might be, hey, I know you have a great background. I know you're awesome, but they're not going to pay 200 and change for this role. So I don't want you to spin your wheels and do this. Either if you're open for taking a little less, it could work. So you kind of have to balance it out. Are you
seeing people throwing their resumes to the wind because it's a high paying salary? Are you seeing them qualified for the position when you actually really have a conversation, take a look at what they've done, what their resume says, that they're qualified for the job and that pay salary? Or are you even seeing businesses say, yeah, I'm going to discount them because, they used to make $150,000 a year and I can only pay 70. And so they're not going to be interested in my job. They're making a lot of assumptions that way as well. What do you see in the market?
That's a great question. It's from when I started recruiting, and this is going to age me, I would come in Monday mornings and I would run in and I make sure that I'd have to pick up the fax papers, the faxed resumes that fall on the floor because,
Mhm.
I don't know if anybody here remembers that,
Yes.
you come in there and if you don't have the tray, it overflows and then you got to
Yes.
match it all up. To now where if you have, with your smartphone, you go on LinkedIn, hit, easy apply. It's just so easy. So I find what ends up happening is that people are quote unquote shooting their shot. They're saying, hey, you know what? I don't really have the background for it, but all I have to do is boop, and the resume goes out. So then what ends up happening, there's an overload, and people understandably, rightfully so, get driven crazy about the ATS systems and all that. But also what I think happens is that because there's so many different sites where you could find jobs to look for, whether it's LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, the job sections of companies, niche sites, so that it's so easy to send a resume, they get flooded. And when they get flooded, it just gets overwhelming. And oftentimes the HR group, the internal talent acquisition group, they don't have enough person power to kind of go through it. So it clunks up. So to give them a little credit, it really makes it harder because they got to wade through everything. And then it's almost impossible to respond. And I'm not making an excuse of them, I'm just giving kind of what I say. Then it's hard for them to reach out back and give specific feedback to individuals because there's just too many. Like I'll get that. I'll post something on LinkedIn, a job, on LinkedIn, and no exaggeration, maybe out of 100 resumes, maybe 2 might be okay. Not even great, okay. And then it's hard to go back to all 100 to say, hey, it's not good, because then they'll say, Jack, what are you talking about? I'm good for it. And then you get in this uncomfortable conversation where it just takes up so much time. So there's a lot of these quirks in the whole job search that goes on behind the scenes that if you're looking for a job, you're not going to think of. But that kind of plays into why it may take longer, why you don't get feedback, by just hearing like the inside story.
What about for career changers? I mean, the people that are changing industries or have a lot of those like skills that correspond to what they're moving into, but yet never had that title, so to speak, or people that have gone for further certification so they can move into a field, but never had that title that they're applying for. How do they apply? How do they set up their resume regarding that?
That's a really great question, because there's so many people who I see who are just smart, dynamic, charismatic, awesome, but let's say they're trying to pivot into a new space, trying to reinvent themselves. Can it be done? Yes. Is it easy at times? No, because a lot of things with companies that I see, they're very rigid. And while we see so many changes happening in front of us, post-pandemic, but even before that, certain things just, I don't understand why it doesn't change. So instead of saying, Teresa worked in such and such industry, has the skills, a lot of these skills could cross over, let's talk with her and let's figure it out. They'll be, no, let's move on. And it's infuriating, because if you take the time to actually have a conversation with Teresa, get a sense of what she did, talk about how her skills could cross over, there's a likelihood it could work. Now, would it work every time? Maybe, maybe not. But to me, it seems crazy that you could have a war for talent, great resignations, companies and businesses complaining we can't find people. But then when you have somebody who has accomplished a lot in his or her career, wants to pivot, that they're not welcomed with open arms. They're kind of like, we'll put on the shelf. Let's see what else.
I like Marty's point. He had put in the chat, before you simply hit the apply button, ask yourself, if you were the hiring manager, would you hire you? And that would help you decide whether you have a good resume, you have done your homework on the company, and the players and the recruiters and that kind of thing. And maybe you don't want to work for them. I really don't know, but you have a little bit of history, so you can knowing good conscience, whether you want to hit that apply button or not.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because to me, if a business says I can't find people, I think the logical thing to do is like, all right, you don't have a perfect fit. Let's try. Now, as to Marty's point, if someone is completely from left field, then it's not a good use of anyone's time. But if there's kind of sort of maybe, to me, you can't complain. But then if you have an option, not pursue that option. That just seems, it just seems foolish. And I don't understand why these executives at these companies don't say to their HR professionals, hey, we got to try everything. Like, for instance, I wrote about this morning for Forbes about boomerang employees. All right, maybe a thing is go back to your database of employees who left and reach out. Some may come back, some maybe not, but try. Same thing, if someone doesn't have the exact background, but has enough that's worth a conversation, have a conversation.
Are you seeing people do that? I know that a lot of people from my end, as well as every networking event that I'm attending, the participants seem to be saying that there is a huge amount of age discrimination.
Oh, yeah.
How far back do they go? Are recruiters doing just what you recommend?
I think there's a lot of age discrimination. I think it's pervasive. I think it's embedded in the system. And for whatever reason, we don't talk about that. We'll talk about all sorts of other.
Okay.
We talk about so many other discriminations, but we don't talk about age. And it's silly not to, because that's the one thing we all have in common. Yes. We're all going to get old if we're lucky. We're all going to get old and live a long life. And this is one common ground that we should all, because we're going to get there eventually. We're all going to get there, God willing. If we live long enough, we're going to, be older. So that's one thing we should all agree. Let's be considerate. But my take is this: I think it's a little different than ageism. I don't think it's necessarily because somebody is, sucking on Werther's candies and, wearing their bathroom slippers to the office and any stereotype you might think. I think it's more the compensation. It's that on average, if you have somebody who's starting to be in their 40s and 50s and what have you, on average, the odds are that person is probably earning less than someone who's 27, 31, 32. And I've seen over the years, even starting before the pandemic, that companies have been relocating offices and relocating jobs to different cities across the country and different countries. And then they're doing it, in my opinion, is that you have somebody who's in New York who's making, let's say, just make round numbers, $100,000. But if you put them in somewhere in Florida or in a different, in India,
Iowa. Okay.
wherever, they're going to pay a fraction of it. So they'll hire someone more junior, and then they'll be in a lower cost location, and they're going to save a lot of money. So I think there's a cost benefit analysis that these companies go through where they say, okay, Jack is a certain age and he's making a certain amount of money. Maybe we can move the job, somewhere else.
So is there a way that you can counteract that or address that issue so that it's not assumed, so
Yes.
that you put you right out of the running?
Yeah, I think what you need to do, and it's so sad and so unfortunate that I have to kind of give this advice, and I don't feel comfortable giving it, but I want to be honest. I think there's preconceived notions about, and anyone who has kids, I have 2 Gen Zs, you say something and they roll their eyes. They think, you don't get it. You don't know what you're talking about just because you're a certain age and you have a gray beard, that you're out of touch and you don't know what's going on. And yeah, we don't want to listen to you. So you almost have to go into the situation thinking that's what they're thinking. They're not going to say it in an interview because no one wants to get sued or get in trouble with management for being so blatantly honest about how they feel. But if you're like in a cartoon where there's a bubble over their head and they're thinking, oh boy, this person, come on, they're not going to work hard because they're older, or they're just going to be really bossy because they think they know everything. You want to go into an interview. You want to go into the situation kind of coming across dynamic, motivated, enthusiastic, your body language, the words you use, the tone you take, the clothes you wear. You want, and because you want to right away dispel that myth so that when they meet you, they're going through cognitive dissonance. They're like, wait, what? Oh my God, this person has more energy than I do, and I'm 32 years old. Wow. And then you also want to come across, because you want to counteract what they're thinking. You want to be able to say, Sam, I'm really excited about this job. It's a great opportunity. I have the background. I've done 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I want to be part of the team. I'm just looking to contribute. And I think with my wealth of experience, I could help mentor people and offer advice. But at the same time, I love working with younger people because I can learn more, and that could help me grow as well. So you want to come across in a way that you could show that the myths and the biases that they may be holding, they start questioning, maybe I'm wrong about viewing people this way. And then because they may feel, because you're older and have more experience, you're going to want to be the boss. You're going to want to take control. Everybody's going to look at you in the conference room when there's a meeting. You want to show, no, I'm a team player. I want to participate. I want to help. I want to contribute. I want to collaborate. So then you're chipping away at everything they're thinking of. And then I think it breaks down the barriers. And I don't want to be naive to say, oh, then everything's great. But at least you're playing the game so that the person who may have said, hey, I'm never going to hire this person, all of a sudden says, I'm really pleasantly surprised. I didn't think this interview would go like this. This is great.
I love that you said playing the game, because I use that terminology all the time, because this whole job search, every part of it.
It's a game. Absolutely.
From networking to branding to resume to interviewing and thank you. It's a game. The whole thing is a game.
It's a game.
Who plays it the best? And you got to know the rules before you can play. So,
you're so right.
Some of the rules that are going to help you succeed to winning that game. But let me ask you this, Jack.
Mm-hmm.
You talk a lot about interviewing and how to present yourself in an interview and knock down those walls so people look at you and think a little bit differently. How do you apply for a job with that same MO? So that they take a second look, so they give you a call to set up the interview without making the assumptions.
One of the best things I think that could help is, number one, to network. And if you haven't done so already, start right away. And what I mean by network has, just like when we started this conversation where like recruiters may have a negative connotation attached to it, networking has that icky connotation, like you're going to go to, an old-fashioned conference and you're wearing your name tag and you put on, hi, I'm Jack Kelly, you phony smile, and it's very awkward and weird and uncomfortable and cheesy. Here's my business card. But networking, the way I look at it is this. If let's say Teresa's looking for a job and I was in her shoes, I would say, I want to work for ABC Company. Let me see, who do I know that works at ABC Company? You go on LinkedIn and you look around and see if there are people you know. And then if there's somebody you know there and you're like, oh gosh, Sam is there. I know Sam. It depends on the level of, how well you know Sam. You may send a LinkedIn note, an email, a text, call on the phone and say, hey, Sam, I see you work at this company. I see there's a job. I'm perfect for it. And I know if I send it, it's going to go to the ATS system. It might get lost. Who knows? Can I send you my resume and can you just show it to the appropriate hiring person or to the hiring manager? Now, is that a big ask? Yeah. Is that awkward for the person to ask? Yes. Is it kind of somewhat awkward for the person who gets that request? Yes. But going back to what Christine said about a game, this is what it is. Because Sam would hope, okay, so the next time I need help, I'll go back to Teresa. Or maybe I'll feel comfortable going to someone else because I'll pay it forward. And you have that. So I think one of the ways to really cut in line, if you will, is to find that person who works at the company. And if you don't have someone who works there, find someone who does know somebody who works there to get them in the door. because that makes all the difference in the world. And a way you could better achieve that goal is by expanding your network, because it's a numbers game. It's a number, because the more people that you connect with, the more people that you get in touch with, the more people that you know, the odds increase that they could help you find that next job and get you in that door, so that you're not just one out of 1,000 resumes that are coming in for that one job. You're standing out because Sam is sitting in front of Karen and saying, hey, check out Teresa's resume. You know, I know Teresa personally. She's great. Here's what's great about her. Why don't you take a look? No pressure, just take a look. And the odds are you have 100 resumes that came in, and Sam is saying, look at it. You're going to look at it because you go, okay, this person vouched for it. Sam's a good guy. Let me look at it. And the odds are high that you probably call Teresa right away because it's just easier. It makes your life easier.
Absolutely. You know what? Networking is a yucky word. It's a word that turns people off. And I want nothing to do with that, or I don't do networking and I don't talk. Think about it, guys. Every single one on this call, every one of us has asked our best friend for a pizza recommendation, or a Chinese food recommendation, or this is just job search recommendation. That's all it is. It's talking to friends about this topic. It's not necessarily asking for a job. It's helping somebody else figure out, now you don't want to work there. You don't want that pizza. Go here instead. That is networking. So you're just putting a different spin on it. It's not a negative connotation. If you want to find out more about networking, and it is hugely successful, Marty Letman is going to speak next week about networking through the holidays for us on a webinar, just like Jack. And he is a master networker. And I definitely recommend, if you have not signed up for it, just to learn a little tricks of the trade, which candy cane is best. I don't know. Jack, let me ask you this. In our chat box, we have someone that had said, I am seeing tons of jobs that I used to see getting $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. And now they're paying for the exact same job, same bullets, $18 an hour. In New Jersey, that's really not feasible. What do you think of that?
I'm seeing this with my son. So he just graduated from college, and I'm thinking, okay, hot job market, everything's good. This should be pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. And, and I'll check myself. I'm not a helicopter parent, but I have great relationships with my kids. So, and I'll see, they'll say, you put in the parameters, entry level, and they say like 3 years experience, 4 years experience.
Yes.
And it's, and I was shocked. I was like, wait, something's wrong. I'm doing all sorts of different kinds of searches, and it keep coming up. Then I did deep dive. And one of the things about Forbes, which is cool, right, for Forbes, is that then I could kind of start calling people and say, hey, you're an expert in this. What's going on? Why is this happening? And then you realize this is the thing. And I definitely see this trend where if they can, these companies are trying to bring down the compensation, and it runs counter to what we're seeing, that business is saying we can't find people, but then they can't find people because they're saying, okay, we're going to pay $18 an hour, and we need you to have 10 years of experience doing this, and a master's degree and a PhD and whatever. And it's like, what planet are you on? This doesn't make sense. So there's definitely been this movement to bring down the comp, to not even offer the job as like a full-time permanent job, but make it contract work, to make it. And I think it's reprehensible for young kids who spent a lot of money, or their parents spent a lot of money on tuition. And basically you have to then be an intern to get a job, to get the experience, to get the job you want. So there's a lot of that there's a lot of that's going on, which is bad. But you know what? I think as a construct, as Christine mentioned, as a framework, if you look at all this through the lens of this is a game, just like in any sport, when the buzzer goes off, it's over. And you might say, that's not fair. If you just gave me a little bit more time, we would win because we had the momentum. Well, no, you can't. That's it. Buzzer rang, it's over. We're done. Same thing with looking for a job and doing this. It's like, okay, a lot is unfair. A lot is stacked against you, but that's what it is. And I don't mean, trust me, I don't mean to be cavalier about it. I don't want to treat it lightly, but I think you could tell from the conversation we're having now, I feel the benefit that I could add is just being very honest and raw about what I see going on. So this way you could feel, okay, this is what, now I'm not saying it's all the truth because this is just my opinion for what I see, but at least you could say, oh, okay, this is what's happening. And yeah, I think if you look at it, it's a game, and any game is not fair. I'm vertically challenged. So if I want to play basketball, I'm not gonna do as well as somebody else, who's 6'5".
Vertically challenged. Is that on your resume, Jack?
I didn't put it on there. I'm not going to be a football player. It's just not going to happen. But so we go into all these things where it may not be fair that you're going into. The odds may be against you, but you got to figure out a way to play it, and you got to feel a way to do it. And one of the ways, as we start this conversation, is maybe you find a recruiter who specializes in your space. Another way is, I think a great way is to network. And when you network too, you just don't, if you haven't done so already, you want to actually start by reaching out and offering to people first. Because if you go and just ask right away, it feels uncomfortable on both sides. But if, let's say, you've done things for people or continue to do things, or if you're not starting today, people who you feel could help you with your search, reach out and see how you could help them first. Now, because you help them first doesn't mean they can always help you back, but you try, and it's a numbers game. If you speak to enough people and you say, hey, Pasquale, I know that you're looking to get this kind of job. I happen to know someone who does there. If you like, I could give you that person's name, or I know the name of a recruiter, or I know someone who works there. Would you like me to introduce you? So if you give, you give these goodies to people, then when you need their help, they should be, not always, because people are people, not always, but they'll most likely have a better chance of reciprocating in kind. And by having that large network, so then you're not going it alone. And this is why it's great to go on these kind of calls, because you could get to know each other, send messages, keep in touch, kind of keep building network, because you never know where that job is going to come from. You're never going to, sometimes I hear stories, it comes from a friend who knew someone, and this happened and that happened. And before you know it, they got a job. So it makes sense to kind of keep reaching out to people across the board.
I like that idea. And that's why I said earlier, if you have a LinkedIn, hopefully y'all do. If you have a LinkedIn, you want to share it with everybody so that they can make those connections, even if they're not in your industry. They might know someone else that's in your industry who knows someone that's in your industry. And the go around, the second line, the third line, if we are a community of job seekers, we've all been there, including myself several times, in job search, and we know how that is. So we all want to help how we can. So what Jack had said earlier about customizing and making sure you know what you want, identifying some companies, is a huge start to somebody being able to help you. So let's see, do we have any questions from our audience? Is there anybody that would like to ask our expert, Jack Kelly, a question? You got him on the call, so let's do that. I love Marty's idea. Be a
I was just looking at that.
first. Yes, like a bank account. Love that.
Exactly.
You know what? Sometimes you need to have stories just like that. And oh, now I get it. When somebody identifies like that, Marty, it's huge to be able to understand what that means in a networking, scary word situation, right? But being a bank, oh, okay, we all use banks. That's a lot easier for me to embrace, understand, accept, and move forward. Absolutely.
Christine, can I add another part about recruiting?
Sure, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's good. Because while people think of any questions, is that another sector is what they call talent acquisition, which is really a way for saying the people who work at the company who are in the recruiting process, serving as a recruiter or related to recruiting. And that's a pivotal part too. And sometimes there's a lot of pressure points dealing with the internal talent acquisition folks. And it could lead to a lot of frustrations, and you may have encountered over time. One of them is that oftentimes they're a generalist. And we talked earlier about, I feel if you're a recruiter, you specialize, it gives you a big advantage. But if you're in a company, sometimes you don't have that luxury. So you may have to recruit for attorneys and sales assistants and people in the operations area and so forth. So it's hard to be an expert in all these fields. So when you see resumes, you're not 100% sure, is it right or wrong, because you're covering so much ground. And oftentimes you can have a great resume, great background, but the person just doesn't know enough about it. And then things get political, because if you keep going to the hiring manager with resumes that don't seem on target, the hiring manager is going to say, like, what are you doing? Do you know what you're doing? And jerky hiring managers, this happens all the time. They'll then go over the head of that HR person and go to their boss and say, this is ridiculous. Come on, we need to fill this job, and they're giving me bad resumes. So now what happens is that internal talent acquisition person is scared. Like, they don't want to send a resume that they don't feel is 100% perfect, because if they do, if they send it one and the hiring managers once again, oh my God, another resume that doesn't fit, they got to worry about their job. So this is so unfortunate. What happens then, rather than sending resumes on, they don't, because they want to wait to find the 100% perfect resume, so that if they send it over, no one could fault her or him for sending that resume over. So when you sometimes send over resumes, you're like, I don't get it. I have a great background. What's happening? That could be one of the reasons. The way it's set up is you have someone who doesn't specialize in it. Yes, I have a landline. We still have a landline here. Sorry, guys. So you have someone who doesn't specialize. For instance, if I had to recruit for Java programmers and software engineers, I would have no clue. I wouldn't know what. It would take months for me to figure out who's what, who's good, who's not good. I just wouldn't know what I'm doing. So you have people that their job is to kind of recruit and find people that they really don't know what they do. So that also goes back to why you want to make it on your resume. Make it easy for them. So they look and go, oh, okay, like really almost dumb it down. So when they look at it, they're like, oh, thank God, this person fits, it makes sense. I'm not going to be yelled at by the manager like I'm giving another bad resume. I could send it over. Whoosh, what a relief.
But you don't want the resume to match word for word the job description that you're answering?
You want to have it close as possible. You don't want to be so obvious that they're like, hey, did you just copy and paste the job description on there?
Right.
Which some do, but enough where it just, so that picture, if you could just mentally picture, and this is, and now I'm going to be reversed ages, is that when I first started recruiting, the average age of internal recruiters would be maybe 35 to 55, and they knew their stuff. They would have like 1 or 2 or 3 areas they focused on, experts at it. With technology, with ATS systems and other HR technology, the average age of somebody in HR is like 12. And because they're young, it's not their fault. How are you supposed to know? How are you supposed to know what every job is, what they do? It's impossible. I can't do it. And I'm much older than that. So it's a system that's really not that great. So now you have a person.
Let me ask you, Jack. I mean, if you have a few agencies, Marty and Ken and Sam and whatever are looking for a candidate, and you have an internal TA, who wins? Like the best person wins. But
it's a race.
Does the agency give it to the talent acquisition, and then they give it to the hiring manager / HR? Or how does that whole thing work and interact together?
It's a race. You want to, if you're an outside recruiter like myself, you want to be the first one to find that awesome candidate and get it in before Marty and Ken got it in. Because if they get in that person, this happens all the time.
Well, I know that a lot of the big question I get, another one, is they'll see the same extremely similar job on Indeed. And they're from different recruiting agencies, and yet they're extremely close and it's probably the same company, but we're really not sure because maybe one left out this bullet and one left out this bullet or whatever. So you're not sure who your answer. How do you go about applying for a blind company to a job ads like that?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you apply that to several and the company gets your resume a bunch of times, they're going to think, oh, why am I getting this resume from Jack so often? He must be really desperate. If he's really desperate, maybe we'll pay him less money. So it's odd. But I would check if you send it to, let's say, to a search firm that posted it. You send the resume, let them know, and then ask. And then I'm a big believer you want to just be very open and transparent. So in the conversation, if you did send the let's say, Marty search firm, I sent a resume to him, and then I see Ken posted it, and I'm not sure if it's the same. I sent it over. You want to have that dialogue and just be open and honest, because otherwise then it gets messy. So if, let's say, Marty shares the resume, Ken shares the resume, Lori sends the same resume, the person at the company is going to be like, what's up? This is weird. You know what I mean? And then everyone looks bad. The recruiters look bad. The candidate looks bad, because it's like no one is talking to each other. No one knows what they're doing. So I would suggest that if you're not sure and you sent a resume to similar jobs, just be open. Say, hey, you know what? I sent it to you, Ken, but I think I may have sent it to some other folks. They didn't disclose the company, so I'm not 100% sure, but it may have. So then,
so that would be a cover letter or an email or that kind of thing to just kind of be. Do you tend to look at, I mean, you mentioned earlier, everyone should have a LinkedIn profile, and yes, it kind of matches, but not really. How far back do you go with a resume or a LinkedIn profile? And do you look at a LinkedIn before a resume, even when it's submitted? Question. I'm sorry.
I tend to like looking at LinkedIn first, because for me, it's not as formal as a resume. So people tend to be a little looser with the LinkedIn, which I like. So I'll kind of look, personally, I like looking at that, but then I'll look at the resume as well.
And then how do you decide who you're going to speak with?
The key is, does the person match the job? Does it match the job? And when used to be in person, but now through Zoom, you try to get to know the person a little better. And if the person has the interpersonal skills, social skills, which is really mission critical too, because you may not have, here's a little kind of quirk too. There's so many quirks in the system. And this is why I'm glad you mentioned about being a game, talking about being a game, because you may have 5 out of the 10 ingredients, but and we've all met people like that. You're just awesome. You know what I mean? Smart, engaging. You just feel like a better person being around him or her. That goes a long way. Now, if you don't have any of the criteria, it's not going to work. But if you have enough, having that positive personality, being enthusiastic, being motivated, that goes a long way. And for a recruiter, it goes a long way selfishly, because I know that if let's say Doreen, having met her, she's dynamic, she's pleasant, she's nice, she's sharp, she's polished, the company's going to look favorably on me as the recruiter for sharing her, even if she doesn't get the job offer, because they'll come back and say, Jack, you know what? We have we really like Doreen. She was fantastic. We have a couple of people who have more experience, but really thank you very much for her. She was a delight. I'm so glad you shared it.
I am so glad that you just said that, because it is all of it, every single stage, what's in it for me. And even a recruiter is about what's in it for me, not about you. It's them getting the pat on the back. And I love that you just said that, Jack.
But the thing is, to me, it's a mutually benefiting relationship, because I'm betting that Doreen, even though she doesn't have everything, to share it, because it's like gambling a little bit. You're playing the odds. Like, I know the odds are against me, but she's good. She has a chance. Mm-hmm. But because of the personality, maybe it's okay. Conversely, but now here's where it changes. So let's say somebody, and I account to this over my years all the time, you just have people who suck at interviewing and they don't even try. And then I'm like, I can't really go to bat for you if you have 4 out of the 10. I'm thinking, how do I go to bat for this person if they only have 4 out of the 10 ingredients and they just come across crappy? They don't come, they're not motivated. They badmouth their bosses. They badmouth their coworkers. When you ask them, why did you move from this job to this job to this job? There's always somebody else to blame. There's always someone else's fault. And I'm like, if I send this and this person comes across to the HR and hiring manager, they're going to say, Jack, what are you doing? Like, why are you sending this person over? Yes, they have the background experience, but this person stinks.
Right.
So I would say, and this is another thing that maybe it's not fair or right, but you have, when you go for interviews and when you have to kind of work on yourself to make sure you come across as a winner. And that sounds like a very nebulous term, but I think you know what I'm talking about. You want to come across as somebody who, as Marty pointed out, like if you're hiring somebody, is this the person I would hire? Does this person give off the vibe, the frequency that this person might not have everything I need, but I just got this gut feeling he or she can get the job done. So how you come across, the words you use, your body language, the way you communicate is so important, because you could have better candidates who and this is what happens sometimes. You have better candidates, but because they think they know they're better, they come across arrogant, they come across as if the job is already mine. And that sometimes turns off people. Whereas if you're coming across dynamic, motivated, positive, enthusiastic, a good person to work with, they'll probably go with the person who has the better attitude, the better personality, even if there's someone who has more on-target experience, because they realize one is going to be great to work with. The other is just always going to be like driving with the brake on, and it's not worth it.
We talked a lot about networking into a job versus resume setup versus LinkedIn setup. Is it a huge turnoff if the resume about section is the same words as the LinkedIn about section, summary section, experience is the same? Like, what is your interpretation? I'm not expecting you to speak for every recruiter. I'm just wondering how that plays out.
To me, if it makes my life easier to understand what they do, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
To me, it could be a mirror image. As long as I feel like, okay, I know what this person does and it's worthwhile having the conversation and trying to move it along. That's selfishly, that's what I'm looking for. Did you make my life easier because I understand what you do? Great,
yeah.
Thank you.
There you go. I don't know how old your children are, but when they do graduate, somebody that is that Generation Z / millennial, just getting out of school and maybe they're not really sure what direction they're going, but they have all this college experience and they're trying to get their career started. How does somebody that's young that wants to enter the market, they don't really have a feel. What do you recommend that they do as an avenue to move up or move across to move up or whatever it happens to be?
See, that's a great question. This is the first time I'm really, because I generally recruit for like mid to senior level people. So I'm going through this firsthand.
Yes.
And what I'm doing is this, I'm networking and speaking to people who do this. Like for instance, I'll do, these LinkedIn Lives and other kind of events and participate. And in networking, I try to get in touch with, let's say, career coaches and folks who do cater to people getting out of school, because I don't know firsthand. So I practice what I preach. So I try to network to find people who do it. And then shamelessly, I'll say, hey, can you help me? Can you give me some advice? Can you give me some suggestions? Can you tell me what to do? Because if I'm that area, I don't know well enough.
I agree. I have one in college, one that just graduated, and I have that issue as well. Like, where do I go? What do I do? And who do I be? And that kind of thing. And, my advice was, after talking to many career counselors, is, okay, well, how about you find a larger company that has a lot of different departments, a lot of different places for you to explore, to move up, to try out and then, yeah, that's not for me, and then possibly move to something else, as opposed to a smaller company where there is no career path, or there is no room for advancement or ways to try out different things. It's not giving you the same type of opportunity. I don't know if that's a answer or not.
No, because it's trying out, you know what, it's trying out different things.
If you don't know what you want anyway.
Yeah, it's that's what we're trying to do, is like just try out different things where if
it's
you know,
okay to fail. It's okay to say, you know what, I don't like that. I don't like that
Yeah.
company. I don't like the way they do things. I don't like, and move on or move out or go to a different department. You just don't know. You have time when you are younger, as opposed to older with a mortgage and kids and
Yeah.
responsibilities and 401k and all that stuff. There are different ideas, different goals that you have, and therefore you have to cater to yourself as well. So, all right, let's see, what else do we have? I've had recruiting agencies tell me they will not put me forward because of the 3-year resume gap. Even though I was a great match. I was a caregiver for somebody. Is this weeding out by recruiters?
Happens all the time. It's what happens is, I think people say, hey, it's the recruiter, but basically it's that the recruiter kind of knows what resumes will get past the HR guards and get to the hiring manager. When I first started recruiting, I could call up the hiring manager, bypass it. Everything has been more formalized with whether ATS or the policies and procedures, how you get resumes over. So that what happens is that a recruiter is going to see a gap and they may think, I don't know if this is going to fly. You know what? Either I'll put it on hold, or maybe I'm not going to send it. Let me see if I can find somebody better first. So these are some of the challenges. I think if you have gaps, if you have kind of non-traditional backgrounds, you need to kind of tell your story so that people either look past it, or you tell your narrative well enough that they say, oh, wow, this is fantastic. So that it's easy when you do something, let's say, you don't want to talk about because you're taking care of a loved one who maybe ultimately passed away, but you have to find a way. How do you make it sound like you were doing something important, meaningful, something that could kind of connect with the job you're looking for? It could be tenuous, but you want to build that bridge so they just don't summarily say thanks, but no thanks.
Remember, Google is your best friend. There's actually, if you Google, there's answers online on Google. Google's great. On what to say if you were a caregiver, and how to start that conversation and mold it into what you want to do or what you want to be when you grow up, using those same terminology, because being a caregiver is hard work and it involves so many skills that you're really touching on almost every industry.
And that holds the truth for anything. It could be maybe just out, during the pandemic, you lost your job. Perhaps during that time, you did community work, or you did something else so that you could have a story to tell. And then what I find out when you're interviewing too, instead of dwelling on it, because what happens, they'll talk about that gap and then it takes up a lot of time and energy. You'd just be like, yeah, as you can imagine, along with 80 million other Americans, I was downsized by my firm, furloughed. However, it worked out great because I was able to reconnect with my family, be there in a time of need, and then couple of everything. But now I'm excited because I could have stayed at that same firm for 10 more years. But this maybe gave me the push to try something new. And this job is exciting. This job is amazing. And this is what I really would love to do. So for me, I'm looking at this in a positive way, that it maybe because of the circumstances, it led me to where I am now. And I'm very fortunate for it. So
all right, did everybody write that down? Because that was really great what he just said.
And that's what you have to do with all of them. You have to take all whatever is negative, whatever could be deemed negative, you want to just turn it into a positive. And you don't want to dwell on any of the negatives. You always want to kind of go back to what you have to offer, why you're going to make the hiring manager's life better, why you're going to make the hiring manager's life easier, and cast off all the other stuff. And then if they do, you touch on it, but then you bounce right back, right towards kind of moving the ball forward.
We do have a question in chat box. She has an NDA and it lasted 10 years. So she can't update LinkedIn. She is having a problem with the resume. A lot of headhunters, recruiters, employers, they're very skeptical of her background, her previous job, because she can't necessarily put that on there because of the NDA. So what does she do? What's your advice?
I've never heard that before. That seems super restrictive.
It seems very restrictive. I was hoping that maybe you would have an answer, because I've never heard 10 years is a long time. And NDAs have changed a little bit as well, as far as what is legal and being able to promote and tell people about your experience. So hoping that, yeah.
I mean, if that is really holding her back, I think maybe one out of several things you could do is consult with an attorney and just say, hey, this does not seem right at all. Or maybe even before doing that, go back to the company and say, hey, I've been a loyal employee, but by having this NDA, I can't get a job. And I don't think you would want that to happen to me. You probably, through no fault of your own, probably people in higher up at the organizations didn't really think of the consequences. The consequences, I'm not able to get interviews or jobs because they can't see what I've done. So I really appreciate if we could kind of talk about it and see if we could lift that NDA so that I can find a job, because I'm sure no one in your company wants me not to work.
Right.
I'm sure you want the best for me. So let's figure this out. So maybe you speak with the company first to kind of sort it out. And if you can't, and you're not going to find a job through it, then yeah, maybe get an attorney to say, hey, listen, this is ridiculous.
An employment attorney might be very helpful in that situation.
Yeah.
I know that they do that free half-hour consulting before or taking a case or not taking a case. So you might want to just kind of throw that question to them in their lap and see what they have to say. I know NDA requirements and laws have changed recently, but since it was 10 years ago, I don't know if it's grandfathered in or what the case is. So that's why that's the best person to speak with. I know that somebody had their hand up, but she might have left.
No, it's Teresa.
Oh, there you go, Teresa. Sorry.
So, I have a suggestion, and I'm not. Hopefully, it'll work. But what I have learned, and just being in contact with people that I work with in senior management positions, I find if you have a gap in your in your work experience, or maybe this may work for the NDA person as well, is to create a functional resume. And that just lists all of your experience, but you have to kind of be creative and brainstorm how you want to section everything out. But it doesn't have the traditional way of saying, oh, I worked for this company, XYZ company, and I've done this at that company. It just kind of groups all of your experience together. And you just have to section it out to say, oh, I'm going to use me as an example because I'm in HR.
We address that in a lot of the videos. Jack, what's your take on functional resumes? I'm curious.
All right. Again, this is completely selfish on my part, that it's easier for me to see the, let's say, quote unquote, more traditional resumes, because that's what I'm going to rely on to do. Functional helps out in kind of getting a sense of what this person has done. But for me, it just makes makes it easier to see.
But what about a person that has gaps in their employment and those biases of people to say, oh, well, you've been out for 3 years, like the person indicated. So how are you going to get seen if now you're already blocked because they see that gap, but so they're not really looking at your experience?
Jack?
It's definitely, it's a challenge. But what I would suggest, if you could find things for what you were doing during those gaps and tailor it in a way that you can kind of make it positive. So whatever it may be, hey, I was writing the great American novel. I was using, my spouse partner has always, worked, and I use this time to take care of the children, bring them to school, and whatever the case may be, where you could weave a narrative that you were doing things, worked at a homeless shelter, whatever the case may be, because I think what sometimes companies want to know is like, were you doing something? Were you engaged? Were you involved? Or you were just sitting on a couch feeling sorry for yourself? So you want to, even if it doesn't have to be like you started, the next Google, but if there's anything you've done that a person go, oh, okay, I get it. And then it fills in some of those gaps. I think that helps a lot.
So I have a part 2 to that.
Mhm.
So how do you indicate that on an application where it says, oh, your work experience? So for that gap, all of the things that you mentioned, like brainstorming and putting together all the things you've done during that gap, how do you list that? Because that's not a company, right? So how do you indicate to say, oh, this is what I've done, but I'm not at an employer?
Well, let me ask you this. If you're comfortable, are you comfortable sharing kind of what you were doing during the gap? And then maybe I could kind of give a specific answer.
So from my experience, it was caregiving. So I had to take care of several people that had situations, and it created a gap where I needed to be there for them. So the way that I thought about it was the things that I've done for them in reference to helping them get better and taking care of, like, making sure that their medicine was given on time, taking appointments, taking care of finances. So those are ways that I thought about how to indicate those things on a resume. But how do I put that on an application as being, that's not an employer, like, it's not working at ABC Corporation.
I
And
think that an application is a little bit different than a resume or your LinkedIn profile. An application is legal, period. It goes in your employment file and it's legal. So you have to be honest. And if you had a gap, you had a gap. And your resume is going to reflect that, but it's set up for in a functional way. I have met many recruiters, any recruiter I've met, actually, whether you're agency or you're TA or executive, they absolutely hate functional resumes. If that is a successful way for you to go, then absolutely go forward, because keep doing what's successful for you. However, many hiring managers, as Jack had said earlier, if he's going to have to go to bat for somebody and talk to a hiring manager and say, hey, this is a really good person, you got to call him in for an interview. They blew my socks off, whatever. They're going to want to know where you did what. And those are the questions they have to be able to answer from a resume. And if it's set up functional of all the things that you have done, well, you got the award for, best customer service where? Well, that was 25 years ago. Okay, but what have they done recently? And I shouldn't have to go back to ask you what that was. And that's why you might not be getting called back. Whereas a chronological will say where you did what. You might want to consider doing a combination chronological functional resume. So maybe your past job is staying home and is 3 years or whatever, but what did you do during those 3 years? You might not have an employer, you might not be paid for that, but what you do before that. And maybe it's separated into 2 or 3 areas that you can concentrate on for that next job using that title. And that is a little bit easier for a recruiter to go to bat for you, saying, hey, they did this, they won this award, they managed this project when they were at blah, blah, blah. And that helps them to be able to describe you and your expertise to someone who doesn't know you from Adam. Does that make kind of sense?
It makes sense, but I'm still thinking about, completing an application. So you still need to, complete the application and fill up those spots. So that's good in speaking to those points. But initially, if you do applications online, they're just seeing what the application says. So you
But they're
don't
not
want to
looking necessarily at the application. So earlier we talked about how important networking is to your job search and how that is really the number one thing that you should be doing. We talked about resumes and all that stuff, but networking and having conversations is way before a job application. And honestly, looking at a job application and how it's set up and what it says is really, low on the list as far as, and that's just for them to have in the system. It's not about making or breaking whether you get through to the next stage of getting a job. Is that correct, Jack?
Yeah, Teresa, was this recently during the pandemic?
Yes.
So twofold. So on the application, it's fine to put find a nice term for it, but taking care of your family. But then on the resume and in person, you could say something to the effect of, let's say Christine is the hiring manager and I'm you, to say something like, hey, as I'm sure obviously you're aware, during the pandemic, it was just so difficult for everybody. And unfortunately, that members of my family, I became the primary caregiver. And they've done so much for me over the course of my life. And this is a time I really felt almost grateful that I could contribute and give back to them and show them the love and compassion and care that they need in such a difficult time. And I feel fortunate I was able to do that and repay it. But now things are better, both in terms of my family and then in terms of the economy and the job market. So I'm coming back into the market. And in addition to my experiences, and you kind of list your experiences, I feel this also taught me a lot. It taught me about being compassionate, being empathetic.
Empathy, yes.
And I think that could really help in the workforce. It's kind of changed the way I think and act. And then if the hiring manager has any bit of empathy, and they're going to listen and they're going to feel it, because we've all been, Teresa, this is something uniquely we've all going through in one way or the other. I mean, I just had one of my family members literally passed away from COVID over the weekend. And because I think personally, not to get off tangent, but I think this has made people reevaluate their lives and their careers. That's why I think you have this great resignation and all these things happening. People are saying for the first time, I just don't want to go back to the way it was. Things need to change. So Teresa, I think before the pandemic, people may have been a little harsher, more critical. I think now most people be understanding. And if a person doesn't understand, you don't want to work for that company. Like if a person hears that and they don't feel anything, that's probably not a good manager that you want to work for, because it shows they lack empathy, they lack care, and you're better off not going to that place.
And if the job is posted with, 2, 3, 4 recruiters, maybe you don't want to work with that recruiter because they're showing a huge lack of compassion and empathy, but maybe another recruiter has that job spec open and you want to work with the other recruiter to gain the job, because you don't always know as a business what their personality is or how they're portraying themselves when they're representing the company. Just like there's good and bad people in the world, which we would all agree, there's good and bad recruiters in the world. Mm-hmm. And Jack is a good recruiter, yay!
Thank you.
There are good recruiters, but there's some really rotten recruiters too. So it is buyer beware, so to speak, which is why we have to network and talk to people. And would you order that pizza? Would you not? Is it worth it? Should I spend my money on that pizza or not? Should I spend time talking to that recruiter or not? And those, it takes time. It takes time to learn who those people are and who the really good players are as you're going through this job search process. So if functional is working for you, great. But if it's not, then maybe change it up. Try things for 6 weeks. Doesn't work, try something else for 6 more weeks. See the results you're getting and tweak it to get what you want.
Thank you both.
All right, so let's see. Lost my job, blah, blah. Same exact thing, very well received. See, there you go, good recruiter, very well received. They love the fact that they took time off to raise their kids, to take care of somebody, and now they're getting back into their position. So perfect example of well received versus really horrible recruiters that you dealt with, Teresa. I'm so sorry. Not a nice person. So oh boy. All right. Any closing remarks that you have, Jack?
Yeah, I would say this. Fortunately, I think we're in a good job market, and all things point to things going to be moving forward, God willing, that there's no Omicron strain that's going to derail us, so that it makes sense to take during this holiday time where it's easy to just say, hey, I'm just going to kind of relax. I would maybe start networking now. And this is, maybe I'll leave you with this tip, because during the holidays, everyone's in a better mood. You're thinking about seeing your family, especially after the last year or so, and seeing friends. So it's actually a really interesting time to network because it's organic. It gives you the excuse to reach out, family, friends, acquaintances, even very loose connections, because it wouldn't seem odd. It's like, hey, hey, Joe, we haven't spoken so long. How's everything during the pandemic? How are you doing? How's everything? So it gives you the license to reach out to people who both you're close with, but then to that wider circle. And then even much more, even people in your office and people who, if you're not working, who you used to work with. So this is like a perfect time to get out there where no one can say, hey, why is Jack getting in touch with me? That's weird. So it's the holidays. Of course you get in touch. Oh, okay. Hey, it's great to hear from you. So I would say you could start, if you haven't already, this would be, I'll leave you with this. This is the best way to start, networking, getting in touch. And then also from the recruiting side, it's the same thing. See if you could find some recruiters and get in touch with the person, with the recruiter saying, hey, it might be, maybe it could be a little slow because the holiday season, people are taking off, but I want to get on your radar. So then when everything starts going back in the new year, I'm front and center on your mind. So in addition to the networking, I would network with recruiters as well to get to know them. They see who you are, who they are. So then when the wheels start going again, usually it takes a couple of weeks into January where everyone gets back to, their headset back. And then you're what is it, 3 weeks-ish, whatever, you can get a lot done. So you get a lot done, build up your network, and that's going to help you move into the year.
A lot of people will stop at the end of the year, such as like right now, and I'll worry about it in January. Yeah. If you do exactly what Jack says and you get your ducks in a row, so to speak, and really tweak and modify what you're doing and reach out and network organically, you are ready to hit the ground running in January, as opposed to just getting started again in January and really not moving forward until February, late February. So now's a good time to have those conversations and network, just like Jack said.
I lied. Can I get one more thing to do?
No.
Can I say one more before we have? So another thing, in addition to the networking, I would do this because what made me think about what Christine just mentioned, just to amplify her comment, is that where a lot of people lay off the gas during this time period, that means people coming out of the market, because they're focused on, living their lives and all that kind of good stuff. But if you can, while everyone's kind of on the sidelines, you kind of get out there and send it. So if you send out, so let's say you send a resume out and how LinkedIn will give a counter of how many resumes. So maybe now you see a job that only has 3 people applied. So you're thinking, instead of like the usual 100, I'm going to have a better chance of being noticed. So I would take this, and I'm not saying kill yourself because it's the holidays, you want to enjoy it, but allocate time to really focus because you'll stand out. the recruiters aren't going to be peppered with calls, so you can get in touch with a recruiter, do the networking, send out the resume. So use these 3 weeks to your advantage. So then when the new year comes, you're kind of up and running where everybody else is still like, rubbing their eyes, waking up, like, what's going on here? You're just like right in front of them.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of great comments in the chat box as well as LinkedIn addresses. So definitely when you get a summary from me this afternoon, hopefully this afternoon, and the recording, take a look at this chat box and see what the LinkedIn addresses are and make connections and network and network and network, even if it's through Zoom, network and just talk to people, because they can get to know you and your stories and your background, and they can be advocates for you, even if it's not the right opportunity for them. And you just never know who knows who knows who. So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me, Christine.
Thank
This
you,
is
Jack.
great.
And we're going to have you back again because
My pleasure.
just a wealth of information.
Hey,
and
can I-
look at all the positive things in the chat
thanks.
about you.
Well, thank you. Hey, how about this as an idea for networking? If let's say you post this on LinkedIn, we could start a conversation amongst ourselves, but then also, because then if you tag people, other people see that you're being tagged, so other people see you, and you can say, hey, I'm looking for this job.
Yes.
I'm looking for this. And sometimes it feels more comfortable if other people are doing it as well. So it's not just you. So maybe if I'm throwing it out there, if you're interested.
That's cool with me. Absolutely.
And I could respond. And then if you have questions, let's say you have a question that you didn't ask now, and you get a question, I could answer a question, and then maybe other people could answer it. So this is a good way to get noticed by doing that. So especially since we have, several dozen people that, others could see and go, oh, wow, wait, this person is looking for a job. I'm a recruiter. I'm going to get in touch and so forth.
Absolutely.
So
that would be awesome. I love that idea. Thank you.
Great. Excellent.
All right.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It was
Thank
terrific. I'm glad I was able to share advice. Hopefully it was helpful. And then feel free to hit me up. And I think if we do it online this way, you can hit me up if you have any questions you didn't feel comfortable in this format to ask, but you feel more comfortable doing online. Feel free. I'll be checking it out today, and till as long as it's up there.
All right. Very good.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much, Jack. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Your time. And I'm so sorry to hear about your family. And
Yeah.
definitely, prayers.
Thank you.
So, yes. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Take care, everyone. Thank you very much.
We'll talk
Bye-bye.
soon. All right. Bye.